The man picked up the skull he had cherished for 10 years and kissed it deeply and affectionately. You might think he's crazy, but in fact, the owner of this skull was none other than the man's wife who had passed away many years ago. Before every major battle, Jarl Borg would pray in this way, beseeching his wife to bless him so he could return victorious. This was not a war of aggression against foreign forces, but a large-scale civil war among the Vikings to fight for territory. Ragnar was fighting on behalf of King Horik, while his brother Rollo fought for Borg. Ragnar was deeply disappointed he had never been willing to believe that his own flesh and blood brother would actually betray him. As the two armies faced off, Ragnar's resentful eyes never left Rollo.
Shield wall! Spears! Charge!
With a resounding order from Ragnar, a brutal battle officially commenced. In this Viking civil war, both sides employed exactly the same tactics. When neither side feared death, the battlefield became a living hell. Rollo found Floki. The two had never seen eye to eye in the first place, so now was the perfect opportunity to settle the score once and for all. Although Floki was a good shipbuilder, he was clearly no match for Rollo. Just as Rollo was about to kill Floki, Arn fortunately arrived in time to successfully intervene. But how could Arn possibly be a match for the terrifyingly powerful Rollo? Rollo's spear pierced straight through Arnie's body and hoisted him high in the air. Poor Arn died a tragic death at the hands of Rollo, the man he considered a brother. Seeing Arnie's gruesome death, Ragnar was overcome with pain and grief. He fought his way out of the melee and came face to face with Rollo.
Is this what you really want, brother?
Faced with Ragnar's questioning, Rollo wanted to strike a fatal blow several times, but in the end, blood is thicker than water. They were family after all, and Rollo couldn't bring himself to do it.
I cannot fight you.
Rollo voluntarily laying down his weapon also caused this fierce battle to temporarily come to a halt. The two sides sat down to negotiate again, but King Horik and Borg still refused to give an inch. Ragnar was furious. He couldn't understand why the Vikings had to fight amongst themselves, all for this tiny bit of land. If they wanted land, there was plenty to the west. Young warriors should go out and expand their territory, not be so short-sighted as to slaughter each other over a small bit of petty gain.
Why are we not looking outwards? I have already found a passage west. We have seen rich and arable land over there. And there must be more.
King Horik and Borg were finally persuaded by Ragnar. The two sides decided to temporarily set aside their dispute, recuperate and build up their strength, and jointly head west together the following summer. Although the conflict between King Horik and Borg was resolved, how could Ragnar easily forgive his brother Rollo, who had betrayed him and abandoned righteousness? Before long, Ragnar returned to his own territory with the seriously injured Floki and Rollo. But after coming ashore, Ragnar discovered that the way his wife Lagertha and son Bjorn looked at him was clearly off. It turned out Bjorn had already told Lagertha about his infidelity. After returning home, Lagertha confronted Ragnar, demanding to know who Aslog was. "Our daughter is gone and you're out there fooling around with other women?" Then Lagertha unleashed a torrent of blows on her husband. Seeing that his wife had vented her emotions, Ragnar calmly said, "I never loved that woman. What do I need to do for you to not pursue this further?"
Never see her again.
But Ragnar did not tell his wife that Aslog was already pregnant with his child. Although Ragnar had truly made up his mind to never see Aslog again, this matter was obviously not as simple as he imagined. The next day was the day of Rollo's public trial. Bjorn asked his father how he planned to deal with his uncle Rollo. Ragnar indicated that he had no authority to judge him, only the lawgiver could decide Rollo's fate. As he spoke, Ragnar kept fiddling with a special gold coin.
What's that you have?
A gold coin. From England. You see? It even has King Aila's face upon it.
the trial officially began. Amidst the crowd's jeers and insults, Rollo was brought before the lawgiver. The lawgiver read out Rollo's various crimes: betraying his brother, betraying his friends, betraying his clan. Each charge was enough to warrant immediate execution, but in the end, the lawgiver went against public opinion and pardoned Rollo for his crimes. He said this was the will of the gods. If they all wanted him to die, then he should die on the battlefield. Moreover, when facing his own brother, Rollo had voluntarily laid down his weapon and accepted judgment. They should spare his life for now. In the face of everyone's opposition, Ragnar still resolutely supported the lawgiver's decision, but what the people failed to notice was that the lawgiver held that special English gold coin in his hand. It seemed Ragnar couldn't bear to let his brother die after all. After being acquitted, Rollo went to the riverside to have a heart-to-heart with Ragnar, explaining the reasons for his actions.
You understand that, don't you? But when I stepped out of it, there was no sunlight. No sunlight at all.
Returning home, Rollo prepared to pack his bags and leave this place, because he could sense that everyone here now despised him. The former Earl's wife Siggy came to persuade Rollo not to leave after all. Rollo was now her only backer. Siggy told Rollo that the only thing he could do now was to once again prove his worth on the battlefield, not just keep choosing to run away. Rollo remained silent. He could only agree for now to stay for Siggy's sake. At this time, Ragnar was alone by the river, wanting to talk to his deceased little daughter Gyda.
Dear child, Gyda, you are not gone because you are always in my heart. They say a man must love his sons more, but a man can be jealous of his sons. And his daughter can always be the light in his life.
As he talked, Ragnar fell into a deep sleep. At the same time, a boat was approaching the shore. Bjorn thought it was the enemy and hurriedly woke the sleeping Ragnar. Ragnar took a close look and was completely stunned, because the person coming was none other than a slog, the woman he had a one-night stand with 6 months ago. Now a slog approached with a big pregnant belly. Knowing that the truth could no longer be concealed, Ragnar rushed home to proactively admit his mistake to Lagertha. But before Ragnar could finish speaking, a slog arrived with much fanfare, demanding that Ragnar take responsibility. Seeing a slog's big tummy, Lagertha was hit by a thunderbolt, and she coldly looked at her beloved husband and instantly felt that this man was so strange. As the Earl's wife, Lagertha kept her cool and didn't make a scene. She composed herself and introduced her family to a slog, arranging a dinner banquet to welcome her. During the meal, Lagertha learned about a slog's background. She was the daughter of a former king, and her mother was also a very famous shield maiden. A slog could be said to come from an illustrious family. In comparison, Lagertha's own background was quite humble. Both her parents were farmers. In their conversation, a slog occasionally revealed a contemptuous attitude.
Surely nobody is just a farmer?
Believe me, Princess, that is exactly what some people are and are happy to be.
To get in good graces with Ragnar's family, a slog even took the initiative to befriend Bjorn, but Bjorn clearly disliked this newly arrived guest. Calling her a guest was a misnomer. In fact, a slog had already treated this place as her own home. Half a month passed and she showed no signs of leaving. Bjorn angrily confronted his father, asking why he still hadn't driven away this detestable woman. Ragnar said a slog was carrying his child. If he did that, how would he be any different from a beast? But Ragnar didn't tell his son that deep in his heart, he actually wished to have many children and hoped his wife and son could accept a slog. However, what Ragnar didn't know was that at this time, Lagertha was already in turmoil. Her husband's infidelity had already broken her heart. Siggy asked her what she planned to do next. Lagertha said she herself didn't know right now. She just wanted to make the right choice for her son. If at this point she was still wavering, then what happened next would become the final straw that crushed Lagertha's inner defenses. A month later, the severely injured Floki had finally recovered. Ragnar held a dinner party for him. After a few rounds of drinks, Ragnar finally dared to voice his inner thoughts. Actually, during this time he had been observing his wife's mood. Although Lagertha was very unhappy about a slog's arrival, she didn't cry or scold. Ragnar assumed his wife would be submissive and go along with it. So he got greedy. He actually proposed that Lagertha and a slog live together in harmony.
I have heard that similar arrangements exist all over this country.
What arrangements?
That an earl can live with more than one woman. It works to the benefit of everyone, especially the children.
Lagertha remained silent the whole time, but her eyes had long brimmed with tears. She had always thought her magnanimity could salvage her family on the verge of falling apart, but it seemed that in exchange, all she got was her husband's increasing audacity. At this moment, she finally made up her mind. Early the next morning, while her husband was out hunting, Lagertha packed her bags and prepared to leave this place. Before leaving, she asked her son Bjorn to make a choice: go with her or stay with his father. Thorstein told Bjorn to stay with his father. After all, his father was the renowned Ragnar Lothbrok. In the future, Bjorn could inherit Ragnar's glory and power. Faced with such a cruel choice, Bjorn truly did not know how to decide, but Bjorn had always idolized his father since he was young. So in the end, he still chose to stay with his father. Lagertha took one last look at her son and finally left in tears. Not long after, Ragnar returned from his hunting trip. Upon learning his wife had left, he immediately set off in hot pursuit.
You're really going to abandon me? Without even saying a word?
I have no choice but to leave you and divorce you.
I don't want you to go.
It's fate.
When a person's heart has been thoroughly broken, it means that no matter what is said, it's all meaningless, even if they still deeply love each other. Just then, his son Bjorn caught up.
I've changed my mind. I'm coming with you.
At this point, Ragnar was so upset he wanted to die, but in the end, he still respected his wife and son's choice. After embracing his son one last time, Ragnar could only watch his wife and child leave with tears in his eyes.